Hi, I'm Diana Giselle, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. In today's episode, I'm joined by Pamela Capalad, someone whose work I've admired since I first began to consider a career in finances back in 2016. Pam is a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor and the founder of Brunch Budget, a powerful offering that created a safe, shame-free space for people, especially creatives and people of color, to make real progress with their finances. Her work has been featured in the Washington Post, Teen Vogue, Vice magazine, and more. She's received multiple awards and is also a Global Good Fund Fellow. Pamela shares generously about her journey, from teaching kids about money as a college student to navigating Wall Street, founding Brunch Budget, and now giving herself the radical permission to rest. We talk about financial trauma, inherited stories around money, the contradictions creatives face when trying to both honor their art and make a living, and what financial liberation really means. There's so much heart and wisdom in this conversation. We name the complexities and the contradictions: capitalism, caretaking, health, rest, scarcity, abundance. And we don't rush to tie it all up in a bow. We let it breathe. So whether you're here as a fellow financial professional, a creative, or someone figuring out your own next move, I hope this episode makes you feel a little more seen and reminds you that you don't have to figure it all out immediately. You've got time. You've got space. Welcome, Pamela. I'm so happy to have you here on Highly Sensitive Money.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
When I first heard of you, I remember I was living in LA, and it was when I was considering changing careers. So I've just been impressed and awed by your journey for 10 years, I think.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That means a lot, because I'm in a weird part of my journey right now, which I'm totally happy to talk about too.
Yeah. So let's talk about how did you get to your current part of your journey? If you can share with people what it is that you do and how you got to your current role.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like I got into money and finance in the most random way possible. I actually went to college for literature. So I have a literature degree, went for literature, graduated with literature, but during the summer, I needed summer work, and I just found this Craigslist ad. That's how long ago this was, y'all. I found this Craigslist ad for a money camp counselor, and I was like, okay, I mean, camp sounds fun. I don't know what I'm getting into. So I just applied and I got the job, and I spent a whole summer of my sophomore year going into my junior year just teaching kids about money. They were 10, 12, 14 years old, and they were getting information about budgeting and credit cards and saving money and investing and real estate and business. And I literally had never gotten this before in my life, not from my parents, not from school. And it just really changed my life. And so I did it for 2 more summers and got into teacher trainings and all of that. And I realized, even though I love reading, I love literature, that I thought I wanted to go into finance. And so I graduated in 2007 and then moved to New York to just see if I could hack it in the finance world. I didn't know enough. I had hit my ceiling as a camp counselor, and I really knew that I wanted to learn more about this. In the meantime, I had met another money camp counselor. She was an educator, and she felt the same way I did. She never got this in school. She never got this from her parents. And so we teamed up and started writing a financial literacy curriculum together. And the organization still exists, pockets change, but the financial literacy curriculum was a total flop. We presented it at this teachers conference with 6,000 teachers, and everyone came by and was so interested in it. And then they realized that they had to teach it themselves. And they said, oh no, this isn't for me. And what we learned from that conference and doing our after research was we had spent all this time writing a curriculum, but teachers didn't feel equipped to teach money because they didn't feel confident in their own finances. And I feel like that was really the beginning of me understanding how much emotion was around money that no one wanted to talk about. It was this taboo. It was, oh yeah, the kids need it. But I never got it. So the cycle kind of continued, right? That's how the teachers were. And so I was in wealth management for about 7 years, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Being in wealth management the intention was always to leave, but I thought I was going to leave in like 2 or 3 years and like learn everything I needed to know. I was super wrong. So I was in wealth management for 7 years, got my CFP while I was there, my certified financial planner designation, and realized very quickly as I was doing more financial planning that my friends didn't have anywhere to turn for financial planning either. And so while I was trying to figure out how to teach kids about money, a lot of my friends would come up to me at parties and just say, hey, Pam, how can you help me? Like, I don't know how to save. I don't know what my credit score is. What's an IRA? Like, I would just get these questions at parties. And I realized not only was there nowhere for people to turn, not only was it a taboo, but especially around my friends who are artists and creatives, there was a lot of shame around wanting money, around not knowing enough around money, around a lot of financial mistakes that they had made. And that's really where I had this aha moment of how can we make talking about this something that feels more grounded, something that feels more connected to people's emotions, and just have that place where we can have common ground. And I came up with the idea of doing it over brunch. And so I actually ran Brunch and Budget, which I ran Brunch and Budget for about 10 years. Probably right around the time we met, I was just starting off. And I was literally meeting with people for food and trading food for advice, for financial advice. And it was so fun. I had a great time. I ate a lot of brunch. And it really showed me that the setting mattered as much as the content, that the context mattered as much as the advice. And I think that really started me down a path of wanting to figure out how to help people work through their emotions around money. And so I ran Brunch and Budget for 10 years. I closed it at the middle of last year, March 2024. A lot of stuff happened in that time, but the main thing was, just like a lot of small businesses in the last couple years, the cash flow just stopped working. And it really became a situation where people started getting scared when interest rates went up, when inflation spiked, and they started prioritizing differently. And we saw that show up in less people being able to afford our services. And so that's what happened on the surface. But underneath, as I've been having time to reflect about this, one of the things that I realized was people are coming to Brunch and Budget for financial advice. And the thing that I really wanted to show people or share with people was what financial liberation could look like. And I think that was the switch for me that I didn't realize was happening in the midst of like all of the big economic factors that were outside of our control were happening. And so I started studying interpersonal neurobiology in 2022 and really understanding it's the neuroscience of how we are hurt and how we heal in relationships. So really understanding how people's relationship with money and how people's interactions with the financial system have really like caused a lot of trauma. And how do we help people work through that? And I feel like that is the phase that I am in now, is not starting over, but evolving and like figuring out all the messy parts of what that looks like. So that's a very long answer to your question.
And it's beautiful. So you had 7 years in investment management. I remember I've listened to so many of your interviews over the years. Really, I have.
Yeah.
And I remember you shared out in one of them that you had a client who had $500,000, and you remember thinking, "Oh, that's not a lot."
Yeah. That was like a moment where I was like, whoa, reality check. I don't have $500,000. Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
wealth management world really like warps your mind because it's how so few people actually live and how so few people actually make that kind of money. But when you start comparing people who are making 5 million, who have a $5 million net worth versus a $20 million net worth, the relativeness of all of that just really puts you in this bubble. And it was an incredible experience in terms of me understanding the other side of the system and also seeing how laws and policies and tax code is just designed for wealthy people to continue to stay wealthy, and we were practicing all of it at this wealth management firm.
Yeah, and we're recording today, March 10th. March 8th was Women's Day, International Women's Day. And I
Yeah.
was walking through downtown Mexico City and they had a sign. I actually forget the name of the woman who said this, but she said, you can't vote in liberation because the people in power who are creating the systems that we vote in are not that's not part of the options that they're going to present you with. So
Yeah.
you need to be a lot more active in the
Yeah.
changes that you're creating.
Yeah, and it's so hard right now to know what that can look like. I think that's what's been tricky for me. That's what's been tricky for a lot of us is like, I think we all have an understanding that voting isn't enough, but also how can you get involved in a system that feels so corrupt and convoluted and confusing? And the thing that I have been really thinking about is Adrienne Maree Brown's emergent strategy, small is all. And the story that she tells in the beginning is about how birds migrate south and how millions of them can migrate all in one direction, right? How do they all know? There's not a leader, right? There's not one bird that's leading them all south. And one of the things they found is when they studied these migration patterns is that each bird is paying attention to the 7 birds around them. And that's how they all make it down there together. And so one of the things that I remember feeling in Brunch and Budget is that I needed to do it all, right? I'm a business owner. I wear all these hats. I need to be able to help everyone and anyone. And I think one of the things that I am really understanding is that I don't have to I don't have to be in all the lanes. I don't have to be in all the lanes. I think there was a lot of kind of reflection around how stretched thin I was that I only realized when I really shut everything down, and trying to figure out what lanes I want to be in and what lanes I can excel at and who I'm paying attention to around me in my community, I think is something that I'm in the midst of figuring out how to do.
Yeah, and it's such a good point of like only having to keep track of 7 birds around you. And I think of the different spaces that I've moved in my own career as a financial planner. I remember you're literally one of my birds. Like maybe you're like in my 30 birds, but like I know
Yeah.
I like keep track of like what are you seeing that I'm not seeing, right? Because
Mm.
there's similarities in our experiences, just being children of immigrants. I remember the second week I was working at the previous firm where I worked, and you and I had met over the summer, I think, or maybe like a
I
couple of
remember
weeks
that.
before that.
Yeah,
We met
yeah.
in person, and it was kind of like I knew about the racial wealth divide, but it wasn't until week 2 of like meeting, I don't know, the 10th client and being like, all of my clients are white.
Yep.
And then moving from Southern California, moving to the East Coast, and in LA, I was obviously Mexican. I was so obviously Latina. And then in Philadelphia, they thought I was Irish or
Mm.
Italian. And I felt like I was being misgendered. And just like the atmosphere in Southern California for me, it feels like the mecca of diversity, even though I don't live there. Like that was very different than what I experienced in the East Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the Bay Area. I felt really similarly. Like I didn't really know I was Asian. if that makes sense. I was like, oh, there's just so many like Filipinos around me, so many other Asian like ethnicities around me. And then like, I lived in San Leandro, which is 5 minutes from Oakland, which is 30 minutes from San Francisco. And this was in the 90s when like it was really diverse. So I feel like I had a really similar childhood experience. And what's funny that you mentioned Southern California is I went to school in Santa Barbara, which is not like Southern LA at all in terms of diversity. And that was the first time where I was like, oh, I'm not white. I'm an Asian person here, and having that feeling of like being out of body and othered and having people misjudge you just for how you look, and making assumptions about you. Like it sounds like people did here on the East Coast.
Yeah, that was definitely an interesting part of my experience. It was like not only is the weather different, but like everything is different. Like I wasn't expecting to have that. And in finance, I mean, I think it's like 70%, or no, it's got to be like 95% white.
I think it's something like that. I think it's the needle has moved a little bit from what I remember. Wait, I haven't seen the stats recently though. I don't know. You might be right. It may be at least 90 to 95% white. I know CFPs have that stat around where it's just
CFPs
that.
definitely have that stat.
Yeah, and it's still only 23% women or something, even after all these years. So yeah, so we are literally minorities in this profession.
Which gives us sight in a different way, right? Going back to like small is all. I also, the way that Brunch and Budget started with it being a bit of mutual aid, not that it was mutual aid, but it was very like low stakes, like there was no differential between. One of the things that I often remind clients is that I may be an expert on money, but I'm not an expert on my client's life. Like they're the ones that know what's going to work for them.
Yeah, I love that because I think that so much of personal finance and financial planning is prescriptive. And it's like, well, just do what I say and like follow these steps and you will be successful in your finances. And the complaints that I hear from traditional financial planners are always like, my clients just don't listen to me. And it's just like the teacher says, well, they didn't learn anything because they weren't listening. It's like, that's because you weren't saying anything that they cared about. That's because you weren't saying anything that resonated with them or connected with them or made them feel seen. And so why would someone take financial advice that seems cookie cutter and seems like, oh, you tell this to everyone. You haven't taken into account my life, my values, like my family, anything like that. And I feel like that is something that is often missing in the personal finance space and in the financial planning space.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's going back to like us being people of color in a space that's majority white. So much of my experience is like not the norm. And I know that my clients come to me because we share that, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm not going to shame them because part of their goals are to send money back home or to support family members that are going through different parts. And it's not that one way is better than the other, because I know how hard it can be for my clients who are taking care of all of their family members.
Yeah.
Right? That can be really draining. But every person gets to choose how they're going to live their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's what is really exciting about how I see financial planning shifting and how I see a lot more coaching really become a part of the practice. And I remember even the CFP board added a psychology module in the last several years, which to me was such a huge acknowledgement from an institution that money is emotional and that you can't take the emotion out of it. And along with that, you can't discount the choices and decisions that people want to make within their financial lives.
When you were introducing yourself, you said that there was shame in your circle, like in creatives, around wanting money.
Oh, yeah.
I would love to hear more about that.
That is like so the thing that I always say to artists and creatives is like they live in such a contradiction because artists are told you shouldn't care about money. If you care about money, you're a sellout. Like if you care about money, are you really an artist? And then on the other side, they're told, well, if you don't make money from your art and you're not successful with your art, are you really an artist? So like, there's literally no way to win. They're like caught in this space of like, I shouldn't want money, but I know I need money to live. And people tell me that I'm only successful if I make money from this art. But they also tell me that if I make money from this art, then I'm a sellout. So how do you navigate all of that? And so you've been growing up with that. And a lot of the artists who I work with are also first generation artists. So they have, family members who are artistic, but the idea of making a career as an artist and making a living as an artist is something that is not in their family. It's not generational because there was no precedent for it, and there was no generational, not wealth, but there was no generational example of it because there, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but the idea of, especially in immigrant families, the idea of making money from art seemed frivolous and seemed impossible, and so to have people in this generation choose to become artists and choose to say, yes, that is my profession, is such a huge and profound thing. And it's also really difficult and confusing. It's hard to tell your family members that. It's hard to tell your parents that, right? It's hard to tell your close circle that. And so I feel like artists and creatives, there's this lack of belonging in general that they have in their regular circles where they're not around other artists and creatives. And then on top of that, there's this shame around that has been designed, I think, for artists around wanting money and needing money, and really feeling like they both aren't allowed to have it, and that if they don't have it, then their art is just a hobby. So how do you work through that complexity of feelings? And that's something that I've really been delving into as I work with artists and creatives. And I think what's really exciting is that there is now this acknowledgement of yeah, that's ridiculous that people expect that of artists. And so I'm seeing more artists getting financial coaching and getting financial training and seeking it out. It's just that the traditional ways that it's done, without acknowledging the emotional side of it, without acknowledging the interpersonal side of it, often causes people to shut down. And I find especially artists and creatives to shut down.
Right. And the trope of the starving artist, right? That people can get so stuck. Like if I'm an artist, if I'm starving, but I'm starving, so maybe I'm too burnt out or too tired from working 5 jobs to actually have the inspiration needed to be an artist.
Yeah, exactly. And there feels like there's only 2 kinds that you're allowed to be. You're either a starving artist or you're a superstar. As if this idea of this in between of an actual working artist, and also it's all or nothing, right? You're either not making any money from your art or you're only making money from your art. And those are the 2 options. And what I've been finding as I've been really digging into artist finances is how much money you make from your art has no bearing on whether you consider yourself an artist or not. And I think that's one of the hardest things for an artist to kind of think about or make peace with, if that makes sense, is art in and of itself is anti-capitalist. Art is something that, and the reason why I know this is because this country has spent so much time and energy working on defunding art, when art is the thing that starts revolutions, that helps people get through difficult times, that allows people to express themselves, that allows people to have that moment of rest, right? And so the thing about art being anti-capitalist is when you bring in the money aspect of it, there's just immediate friction. And so how do you work through that and process that?
It's interesting because it's making me think of giving caretaking, right? That's one of the things that caretaking can also be anti-capitalist, but it's not included in our economy because it's just not, it's women's work.
Mm-hmm.
If you are adding an amount to it, if you're having a dollar exchange to it, then the relationship doesn't feel as primary, right? Paying for someone to take care of your parents, there's a lot of shame. You should be the one taking care of your parents.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And with art, the fact that you don't really know what the price is going to be. Why are the price differences so huge? It it turns money on its head because we think money is so logical.
Yeah.
It really isn't. It's kind of like, why is housing always increasing and making it so difficult for people to find the right kind of shelter?
Yeah. It makes no sense. And I think that is like when you think about these systems and you think about capitalism, I think it's this weird facade of logic when really it's just how can rich people exploit everyone else? Like that's what it comes down to in so many ways, I feel like, is when you think about housing and you think about how wages haven't gone up and people need shelter. So that they've commodified that. And they've said, well, if you need shelter, then we can just keep increasing the price, and enough people will always be willing and able to pay for us to continue to make a profit and not see a loss. And I don't know when the end of that ceiling is, but that is what that feels like.
There was something you said about art feeling frivolous, especially if you're telling other people about your art. And it reminded me of a phrase I've heard of, internalized depression, right? Where you grow up, I mean, my parents, I know, definitely did this. It's like, this is the way to stay safe. And if you're moving outside of that, if you're wanting to have more meaning in your work, if you're trying to have a job that is not just about the money, then you're not going to be safe. So it wasn't that they were shaming me. They were just letting me know ahead of time. So then as I was making career choices, I already had internalized that voice. That's the word can be oppression. I was oppressing myself, but I was also doing what I knew to keep me safe. So when I hear you talk about artists having that struggle about wanting to do their work, it's what's taught your ancestors or what taught your parents or what even taught you in your own 50 years that you've been around, however many years, to keep yourself safe. So just like having a lot of compassion.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we're at that edge of learning.
Yeah, and I came from that, you know. When I told my parents that I wanted to major in literature, my mom was like surprisingly totally cool with it, and my dad just said, "You know, we could just buy a car instead of pay your tuition. Like that's how much we're paying for you to read books all day, you know?" And I feel like that one of the things that I think about is like, what if I didn't discover, you know, financial literacy in college? What if I just decided like I'm going to be a writer? Because that is something that I've always wanted to do. It's something that I'm like in this like stage of evolving, just rediscovering in myself, the creativeness and the writing and all of those kinds of things, and like figuring out how to express myself in a way that isn't necessarily like, oh, I have to monetize this. And there is a lot of just hearing what you said and thinking about my journey. It was so much easier to tell my parents that I decided to become a financial planner than I decided to become a writer. And it felt practical. It felt like, well, look, I got this degree. You let me have this fun in college. And now I'm going to like put my head down and get to work. And it was just so much easier to be like, yeah, this is what I do. You have an understanding of that. You know that I'm safe. My mom, when I got my first job, she was like, has health insurance, right? That was her first question. Not what do you do? What's your day going to be like? You got health insurance, right? You know? And so I totally feel that just on a personal level.
I heard your podcast with Paco de Leon on weird finance. I'll link to it so that people can
Yeah.
hear the whole story. But you talk about moving to New York and telling your family you had a job
I did.
and like you hanging out at the park.
Yeah. I did move to New York without a job and then told my parents that I actually did have a job. So that was, oh my gosh. I'm like, I hope my mom doesn't start listening to podcasts at some point. She
Your
still
mom came
doesn't
to
know.
visit you.
Yeah, my mom she came to visit me, and I had to pretend that I had a job when she came because I was like, yeah, I moved here for a job. So I had to pretend I'd left for work every morning. I got dressed like I had a job, and I just like had to hang out in the park until like 5 p.m. Because I was like, my mom cannot know that I moved to New York without any plans.
Well, and I bet that a lot of your artist clients probably relate to having done things like that of like, oh, I don't want people to know that I'm an artist or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
I think one of the reasons why working with artists resonates with me so much is because of all of the different versions of ourselves we have to show up in. you know? And I think that the, you know, daughter of an immigrant family is one of them, where I know that proving to your parents in some way that like you made the right decision, you, whether or not you decided to pursue art or whatever it is, there's like such a, what's the word that I'm thinking of? There's just this, I know for myself, and I've seen this in my clients too, it's not even that you don't want to disappoint them, it's that you don't want them to worry about you. You know, you don't want them to be afraid for the work that you're doing or if you're able to eat or things like that. And I think that one of the things that I've seen with artists, and that it's funny when I say it back to them, they're like, "Oh yeah," is that their parents just like have no idea what they do. And like even having to explain like what your job is like, I'm like, thank God I like got a job that I could easily explain and like put in a box. And to have to tell your parents that you decided to become an artist, it feels like a coming out thing, you know? Like, mom, dad, I like decided I'm going to be an artist.
Yeah. I know for when I left my job as an investment manager and then moved into more money coaching, I was explaining to my dad what my work was. And he's like, people pay you for that? Who needs that? And I know that one of the things that I told my parents when I started being an entrepreneur, it was like, this is how much I have for my safety net. Like, I'm okay. I have this amount of cash that I'm
Yeah.
going to sit on. And like, I was a digital nomad for 2 years and I did not spend any of it. It's
Oh,
just like, just in
like,
case.
just in case. Oh my God, we're the same money personality. That's so funny because I remember when I quit my job to start Brunch and Budget. I talked to a bunch of friends. My mom was the last to find out. I talked to a bunch of friends about how to talk to my mom about it and how to tell her. And I had all the answers. I was like, okay, I have to think about every question she's going to ask. Yes, I have health insurance. Yes, the business is making money. I didn't make this decision until I knew that I was going to be able to make money off of it. And it's already making money, mom. Can you believe it? That was not true. It was not making any money. I quit my job on a whim because I wanted to take a trip to Asia for a month. And I was like, I guess I'm quitting. Um, but when me and my mom met up and I dropped the news to her, I had all of the answers. I had to be like, okay, let me explain this to you in a way that makes you know that I'm safe.
If I can ask, what about this most recent transition when you closed Brunch and Budget and last
Yeah.
year?
You know what's so interesting is I didn't prepare how I was going to tell my mom this time, because I think that over the years, her seeing me run a business has made her feel, and do it successfully, has made her feel more, and I've never thought about this before, but it's true. It's made her feel more confident in my decision making. And so when I told her that I had to shut down the business because it just wasn't making the money that I needed it to, she was like, "Oh yeah, shut it down." I didn't even tell her what I was doing next. I didn't tell her I had a job. She didn't even ask. And I didn't even tell her that I had a job lined up, or I didn't have a list of potential questions in my head that I might have to answer. And I was really surprised by her reaction and how chill it was. And I didn't think about it until you asked me this question. And I was like, oh, yeah, she didn't ask what I was doing next. She didn't have a bunch of questions for me. I think she just trusts that I'm going to be okay. And that is, wow, that's pretty cool. As I process this literally on your podcast, I'm like, oh, mom, our relationship has evolved even.
Yeah. 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 I guess it's the relationship between like two adults.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. I mean, I help them with their finances, you know, because I was a financial planner. It's like having the doctor in the family. I'm the finance person, so I'll make sure they have their estate plan and like double check their investments and like be on the calls with their advisor and all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, so there is like another level of trust like 10 years later, which is actually really cool.
Yeah. And going back to what you're doing now, do you want to share what you're doing? I don't know what you're doing now.
Me neither. Me neither. That's the big secret. I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's like every day is like both like an existential crisis and a like grateful that I'm able to take this time. Like I vacillate back and forth depending on the day or the hour of like, wow, like we have one of the things that I did during Brunch and Budget is I also had my own business and a side hustle because why not? But my husband Dialect and I were also teaching workshops for artists and doing trainings and things like that. And so I was able to take those relationships and continue them through the like speaking in workshops company that we have called Get Shameless. And we were able to continue those to just give us a soft landing. And then so I shut down Brunch and Budget in May 2024. And in October 2024, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So starting in August, I started feeling like pain in my neck that wouldn't go away. And then it shifted down to my legs and my hands and my arms. There were points during like trying to figure out what was going on with me where I just like could barely walk to the bathroom. I like couldn't brush my teeth because my hand was so swollen. So grateful that I have the diagnosis for sure and like know what's going on and I'm on medication. But I think that my body was telling me to stop. My body was telling me that I had been running too hard for too long. And, you know, that doesn't always manifest into an autoimmune disease. In my case, it did. And if you're not familiar with rheumatoid arthritis, it's basically your immune system overreacting, thinking there's a foreign invader and attacking your joints. And so your joints just swell up and it can happen at any age. So it's different from osteoarthritis. Like there are people who can get rheumatoid arthritis as kids, as teenagers. I'm 39. So, you know, it's when people only hear the arthritis part, they're like, you're too young for that. And I when they told me the name, I was like, oh my God, why did that happen to me? But yeah, so that I think has led me down the path of trying to be a little bit more patient about what I'm diving into next and figuring that out. I remember when Brunch and Budget shut down being like, all right, I got to figure out what the next thing is. And I was still back in that same mode. And I think that even though this disease has been really hard and I'm super grateful that I have my family who has been really helping, like, you know, take care of me and take care of the household. Dialect's mom lives with us and has been helping with all the childcare and things like that as well. I really don't know what I'm doing next. And I think that one of the things in terms of like my reflections over the last 10 years is I think that we were taught to be, especially women, were taught to be girl bosses. We were taught to hold everything up. We were taught to be in every lane. It was celebrated, you know, and the amount of backlash and burnout from that and people just wanting and needing to rest. I'm a part of that now. You know, I'm a part of that wave of women in particular who were kind of sold this bill of goods, and all that has been left with it is a government that didn't provide a safety net. A lot of small businesses who really just like got completely like turned upside down with the pandemic and the, you know, and the like threat of recession that followed after, you know. And I think that along with that and these health issues that have come up for me, I am in a space right now where I am trying to let myself experiment again and let myself remember. I love what you said earlier about how Brunch and Budget was like this low stakes way to talk about this, and how that how having that entry point for people was what people needed. And so what is the next version of that, right? And what is the version, because brunch is so 2015. Brunch also feels like not enough. It feels like that now is the time to get shameless, and that's where the name came from, is really being bold about what we're struggling with and being bold about celebrating our successes, and also about prioritizing our values in our community, because that goes against everything that we're told in so many ways. Being bold about resting, being bold about not knowing what you're doing. I think that there was such a push to like be a brand of yourself in the last decade that I hope we're falling away from, because one thing that I've learned, especially in these last couple years, especially going through the pandemic, is that the people around you are going to be the ones who take care of you. And so I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing next. A bunch of little things that I'm trying.
You remind me of this joke by Ali Wong. She says, I don't want to lean in. I want to lay down.
That's exactly right.
Like the girl boss lean in movement.
No,
No.
no, thank you. How do we all fall for that? Like, yeah, work as hard as possible. Try to have it all without any additional resources, but just muscle your way through and then get on a panel and talk about it.
Yeah, super, super extractive. I know I've been an entrepreneur 3 years. This is the beginning of my 4th year. And the first 18 months, I was really an extractive boss. I was like, how do we make you only work?
Yeah.
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 And it was, yeah.
It's really easy to fall into that trap, because especially when I remember this with Brunch and Budget too, when you work for yourself for the first time, people don't tell you that. They only talk about the freedom part. Oh my God, you don't have a boss anymore. You don't have to answer to anyone anymore. You get to make your own schedule, all of this fake shit that isn't true, right? Like, of course you have to have a schedule. Of course you have a boss, your clients, and you also don't get any feedback from anyone else on whether or not you're actually doing good. So it's like, it reminds me of like a snake oil salesman who only tells you all the benefits and doesn't tell you all the side effects or all the downsides of it. It's like, it really is like, it's a trip, because you're really, the shiny Instagram version of it is nothing like actually doing it in real life. And the amount of work and pressure that you put on yourself is so much more than anyone else would do on you.
I know that definitely was my experience. After those first 18 months, I was so burnt out. I remember I was trying to upload a photo onto this course I was making. And I had 20 minutes before a client call. I just started crying. I was like, I
can't upload this freaking photo. Not that I've ever been there,
Oh my God. I was so sleep deprived. I was a digital nomad, so I was moving every month.
Oh. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. And doing client calls and updating your website and marketing and sales and keeping up with social media somehow. Yeah. And doing the accounting and the bookkeeping and all of that. So it's so much.
I walked away from that experience though. I gave myself, I think it was a season, 3 months, where I didn't add anything new. I just took care of what I already had. I stopped social media and I didn't go back for 2 years because social media wasn't making me any money.
Yeah.
I'm like,
that's the big trick too. It's true.
I was like, why am I doing all of this work for Facebook? Really, do they really need my content? I think they're going to be fine without it.
Yeah, I know.
But I had this prayer of spaciousness and impact. And I still remind myself, because it's so easy. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs.
Oh.
And my mom just she can't if there's any opportunity for it, she takes care of senior citizens. So there's any senior citizen that might need some help. She will like cancel everything and run to them. And my dad is also like, do you only work 40 hours a week? Like, what do you do? Like, workaholism is really
Wow.
valued in my family. So, me
Yeah.
having to like consistently remind myself of spaciousness, like, what does spaciousness feel like for me? I
Mm.
forget, you know, like, I'm like, this is meant to be my new routine. I'm going to have downtime. And then next thing you know, yeah, hopefully this last time will be the last time, but we'll see.
For sure. Whew.
Going back to Adrienne Maree Brown's work on emergent strategies and the small is all, are there any like, I'm thinking of Dead Day Job Army, which I think has
Oh, sea
changed
change. Yeah.
names, Sea Change.
Mhm.
Are you still running that
We are running it for organizations. Yes.
for organizations?
Yeah.
And can you tell, like, is there any link between the group work that you're doing and then maybe the emergent strategy where the small is all work?
Yes, totally. I mean, see, I think when Sea Change originally started, I think I had that quote on the website because it just moved me so much. This idea that like these small groups could move together. And I think that's one of the reasons why Sea Change needed to be a group program and still is. So the last Sea Change cohort that we had was from mid 2023 to mid 2024. And Sea Change is a group financial cohort, is like the best way to describe it. And it was specifically designed for people of color. And then we actually narrowed it to creators of color. So artists, creatives, nonprofit leaders, entrepreneurs, healers, folks like that who just like create something out of nothing, you know? And I think that one of the things that we learned doing this last cohort, and this last cohort was interesting because it was funded by the Mellon Foundation in partnership with Art Built, an organization who specializes in lending circles and matching programs. So we did a lending circle and matching program along with our year-long Sea Change programs. There's a 7-month lending circle embedded within that. And people came for the lending circle and stayed for the program, which was really interesting feedback to see. Is like, you know, there was a lending circle that would increase your credit score, and there was $1,000 match at the end for participating. We did a lending circle with Mission Asset Fund, and a lending circle is basically the best way to describe it as an example, right? So it's, let's say there's 10 people in a lending circle. Everyone agrees to put in $100 a month, and everyone takes turns receiving that $1,000, and it goes around the circle. And so Mission Asset Fund is a nonprofit that facilitates lending circles electronically. So we're able to put these artists into 2 different lending circles where they each got $100 taken out of their accounts every month for 7 months. And then, because they were 2 different groups of 7, and then at the end of the lending circle, they got $1,000 match as part of the grant that we got. And then on top of that, they got group coaching and one-on-one coaching as well within the program. And we were studying interpersonal neurobiology, and this was the first time that we integrated what we were learning into the Sea Change work, because we started taking those classes because of what we were learning from participants in Sea Change. There was a lot of emotions around money and a lot of trauma around money that we didn't know how to name and we didn't know how to support or address. And so by taking this course that was specifically interpersonal neurobiology for practitioners of color, working with people of color, it was really, what we found that was amazing was it was really transformative for the participants to process these interpersonal neurobiology concepts in a group, and to not necessarily process it on their own, but to hear other people say like, oh yeah, like, you know, to talk about their window of tolerance, to talk about explicit versus implicit memory, to understand that like their money personalities are not a disorder, that there's not something wrong with them, but they're really an adaptation to like protect their bodies against capitalism. And so we went through all of these concepts along with personal finance and racial wealth equity concepts together in each of these monthly meetings over the year. And by the end of it, people had their finances together, but my favorite results where they just actually felt more confident around like being able to do this without us, you know, being able to name how they were feeling and what their emotions were around money and to have language for it. I think that was the biggest, most exciting thing. Like I remember we had just taught the window of tolerance concept and it was like tax time. And one of the participants was like, yeah, I just told my partner that my window of tolerance is going to be small for the next couple weeks. So to just bear with me. I was just like, wow, you just get that language and you're able to like within you sorting out your relationship with money, you're also able to like make your actual relationship stronger. And I think that's what's really powerful about teaching all of this together and doing it in a group so you can all share with each other.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with Barry Tesler. He,
Yes, Art of Money. Yep. And I'm
Art of
actually currently
Money.
taking Trauma of Money course. Yeah, with Chantel Chapman.
Yes, yes. I've heard a lot about it. I know a lot of people who've graduated and have really loved that course. But you're making me think of money, anything can be a doorway to like personal development and personal growth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you think of money as representative of your values and your emotions and like how they go back and forth with each other, and how it's so interesting. I feel like your emotions are like how you're feeling in the present, and your values are like this ideal self that you want to reach. And I think when they can get closer and closer together, that's when your nervous system can really like be calm, you know?
And learning how to become, I mean, within the systems that currently exist, within extractive capitalism, like how do I, again, going back to that quote, small is all, right here in this conversation that you are and I are having, how do I just like stay present and not think about all of the million to dos or all of the, just like having a regulated nervous system in the here and that being the entire practice and
Yeah.
taking that from place to place. Like having, I always remind clients, it's like when you have a positive experience with money, you're you're like cleaning, you're washing all of the negative experiences. So every positive experience is something to celebrate, to highlight, to like anchor into.
Yes, I love that. And that goes coincides with one of the concepts that we learned about disorder versus adaptation. And disorder is something is wrong with me. I'm doing it wrong. Like I need to fix something, right? And that inherently makes your brain go into binary, good, bad, right, wrong, like yes, no. And that's why people think like, oh, I've made all these money mistakes. I'm bad at money. Like I just can't do this, right? I wish I had known better. You tell all these things to yourself when the reality is that all of these things are adaptations and they're adaptations for your body really protecting you and saying, hey, like you don't have the adaptation. And adaptation really is, I'm trying to think of like the words to describe it without like literally quoting my teachers.
Well, one of the,
Oh,
the
yeah.
thing that comes to mind when I hear you say disordered versus adaptation, I think of like food. Disordered food where you're like binge eating,
Yeah.
and adaptation where if you grow up with scarcity, sometimes there is and sometimes there isn't. It
Mhm.
could be an adaptation that when there is, you just eat it all because you
You
don't
see
know
it
what
all.
it's coming.
Exactly. Figuring out the root of it. That's perfect. Yeah. And that is what happens with money too, is like people who you think you're overspending, like the money that comes in goes out as soon as it comes in. And it's really, it goes back to that scarcity thing of when I was growing up, I didn't have very much. So whatever we had to spend. And so whenever I have money, I just know I have to spend it. Otherwise, someone might take it away from me. Right. And when an adaptation can evolve and what you're describing around like when you have a positive money experience, it can wash away the negative ones is when you're able to acknowledge your adaptations and thank them for protecting you, then you're in a place where you can take those positive money experiences not as a fluke, but as you evolving your adaptations. And I think that grounding and understanding of like, oh, that wasn't an accident that I had a positive money experience. It was actually something that I'm doing to break this negative cycle that I have, you know? And I think being able to evolve your adaptations the only way to do that is to acknowledge and thank your existing adaptations for protecting you all this time.
Slowing down and listening to ourselves, listening to our adaptations, like what are they trying to do for us?
Yeah.
And as the one of the questions to wrap up on, when you were talking about Brunch and Budget, you said that there was a transformation within you where clients were coming to you and you were helping them get their finances in order, but within you, you wanted to focus more and more on financial liberation. And I know I've experienced that dissonance where like I want to talk about their feelings, and the clients are like, I just want you to look at my taxes or whatever.
Yeah.
That's not what I came for. Like I've changed my branding so that it's clear that I want to talk about their feelings. I have a podcast on like sensitive money, but that transform. I wonder if you can share, how did that focus on financial liberation start to happen within you, and what would it look like now to support people in creating that for themselves in an ideal world?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I want to preface this by saying I'm still trying to figure out what that means and what the definition is. But I do know one of the things that we had on our website, we say all the time at Brunch and Budget, is we're trying to work ourselves out of a job, right? Like financial planning shouldn't even exist, but the system has gotten so complicated that now you have to hire a professional to do it. And so our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. But inherently, the business model that Brunch and Budget existed on of monthly subscriptions and ongoing subscriptions meant that we were incentivized to keep our clients for as long as possible. So while we were trying to work ourselves out of a job, the business model only worked if we had ongoing clients for a long period of time. And I think that disconnect just became more and more apparent, in the last couple years, especially. And then in the last year of Brunch and Budget, I think even my motivation to get new clients just felt off. And I think that was why. I think that we weren't liberating people from even us, much less liberating them from the system. We were hand-holding with them. We were giving them advice. We were giving them like a safe space to talk about money. But were we actually helping guide them to be able to do this themselves? And I think one of the last things that we did within Brunch and Budget was this sea change cohort that I told you about, where we actually integrated the interpersonal neurobiology work into this. And even though by the end of the year, there's no way that they learned everything they needed to know about money, by the end of the year, I felt confident that we had given them the foundation they needed to have less shame, to be less afraid, to be able to face these financial institutions in a way that was empowering. And I think that's the direction that I am excited to move into when it comes to financial liberation, is that one of the ways to not be beholden to the system is to not be beholden to me as your financial planner. And what a scary thing to realize when like that's what your business is built on, right? And so as I'm unraveling like all of these reflections and all of these feelings, that's the other thing I'm thinking about is, how do I create a business and a business model that is truly rooted in financial liberation? And what does that mean for people to be able to get that? And for me to be able to sustain myself and also feel financially liberated for me. So that is the beginning of the experiment that I'm in.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, that was a beautiful example that you ended sea change on, that people felt more confident, right? That's one of the things I have like this list of like, what does confidence with money look like? And one of the things is that when you see something, a financial term, or you have a financial question that you're not familiar with, you don't go ostrich. You don't like automatically just like hide. That isn't happening. But that you are curious about it, and that you can think, oh, like maybe there's a person I can ask.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. It isn't just like oh, I guess I'm just never going to think about this again moment,
Well, I'm really happy to have this conversation with you, Pam, and to hear the iteration that you're in right now of just owning a lot of more spaciousness for yourself. I know it's really important to me. And I'm excited to see what happens next, or if you decide to just like coast for as long as you want. Like it's all of it is valid.
Yeah, totally. And I think that thank you for saying that because it goes against everything that all of us have been taught.
Yeah. Immigrant daughters, yes.
Oh my gosh. Like, ask my husband how many times I've told him, like, should I just get a job? I should just get a job, shouldn't I? Because what am I even doing all day? And trying to fight that instinct is so hard. So I appreciate just like the affirmation around just giving myself time to figure it out or not figure it out, you know?
I mean, I just want to reflect back to you again that when I was considering this career change, you were one of the few women of color in the space that I saw,
Yeah.
right? And it means a lot to see ourselves in this space. And I knew that you were doing something so outside of the ordinary too, working with people who didn't have $1 million. So
Yeah.
whatever it was that created that is still here. And you sounds like you just need a rest.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yeah, and things need to remain fallow for as long as they need to, right?
Yeah.
Like nature can teach us a lot about that. So
Mhm.
I uphold you in all your rest. And whenever next time you ask Dialect if you should get a job, I'll be next to him and be like,
That's what he always tells me. I appreciate. Now two people say, "Don't just get a job."
no, whatever is next, it'll be clear when it's clear, and we
Yep.
can't force it.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm remembering I tried baking for the first time last week because
Oh,
I'm 37 years old. I've never baked because you don't bring desserts in the house. That was just something I grew up with. Especially do not make dessert. And
wow.
because I'm very new to this, it wasn't fully baked when I took it out, but I didn't know.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you can't put it back in and bake it again. I don't think so. I think I would burn it.
Yeah.
So whatever is inside of you, don't take it out before it's fully baked.
I love that. Baking lessons. Yeah. It's true. It's true. That is hilarious and profound.
My pleasure. Well, again, wonderful to see you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
It was such a gift to share space with Pamela Capalad, a leading innovator in financial liberation. We explored so many threads that connect our financial lives with our emotional truths, from getting shameless to redefining success, from burnout to bold rest. This conversation reminded me that healing our relationship with money is inseparable from healing our relationship with ourselves. You can find all the links we mentioned in the show notes. See you next week. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.